Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Big East Rewind. I am Chuck Everson, your 7-foot host from Villanova University. And today, I had to go to the bullpen to pick up one of my brothers, one of my 85 teammates, number 31 in your program, number one in your heart, the great Mark Plansky. How are you, Mark?
Chuck, always available in the bullpen. You know that. Thanks for having me.
I know. Anytime I call you there, just like the rest of us on that team. You know how that goes, Mark. So I appreciate you coming out and hanging with us. And we have it's ironic that you're here because we have the new head coach of the Cats with us today. So it's going to be a fun conversation for us. We'll have a good time. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest. He played in the Big East, Mark, with the Pittsburgh Panthers back in the day. Started his coaching career with the Celtics and Louisville under Coach Pitino, and was the head coach of Iona, Seton Hall, where he beat us in the 16 championship, Big East championship game by a deuce. That was an unbelievable game. I think we were both at that one. That was a
I was
great
there.
game.
I was there.
Yeah. Spent the last 3 seasons at Maryland and now is the top cat at Villanova. Villanova's new head coach, Kevin Willard. Welcome to the show, Kev.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been what's it been like so far for you? I mean, you come in here in a whirlwind. You know, it was a lot of emotions on both sides. One group excited, the other group not so excited. And now you're here. What were your thoughts when you first came into to campus?
Yeah, I mean, Chuck, it's been great. It's been a whirlwind. Obviously having to put 13 guys on the roster in a short period of time, but the community has been unbelievable. The Villanova family is great. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and just excited that we're only about 4 or 5 days away from our first game. So
Yep.
it's been great. I don't have a complaint besides the fact that we've I can't believe how quick 5.5 months have gone.
Yeah. That and when you stepped on the campus, like how did you I guess you spoke to Jay first before you during this whole process, right? Take us through the process on how you came in from Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a quick process. I think we lost on Thursday out in San Francisco. I talked to Jay on Friday night, I think, after we got home. We got home late on Friday night. Talked to Jay about just kind of, A, would he support this, and B, what were his thoughts? I knew the program so well just because of the 12 years of going against it at Seton Hall, and I had so much respect for what Jay had done, and obviously what Lap had done before that. When I was at Pitt and seeing you guys like Kerry Kittles and all those guys playing against those guys, and I knew the history, obviously, of '85 and your guys' team. And then, the biggest thing was, Father Peter came down, I think Saturday afternoon, to talk to my wife and I. And so that was really the first time. I think it was Saturday morning was the first time that really we kind of talked about it as a family. I got both my kids there. And really after Father Peter left, he sold my wife on it within like the first 30 minutes of his vision of Villanova and what his values were. And that was probably the big thing, Father Peter making the trip down to see us and spend time with us. Eric Rodell was there.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was kind of, it was really a family decision. We sat around after Father Peter left, and we all kind of talked about, this was probably the biggest decision of our lives as a family. And it was the first time, because my kids are older. I have a freshman in college, a senior in high school. I had just moved my family from New Jersey, where we loved. This was like the first time we all took a vote, and everybody got a full share, to
Yeah.
say the least. And usually it was just me. It was, kind of like, hey, this might be time. This is a great job, and so we took a vote, and I think, but really it was Father Peter coming down that Saturday early morning with Eric that really sold my wife, and that was, to me, it just showed that when the president of the university makes the effort to come down and tell you how important that you would be to the university. And obviously Jay's blessing, I'm pretty sure his Friday night was huge.
So, Coach, it's good to hear that Father Pete learned something from Coach Jay Wright and home visits over the last 20 years.
He gave a great home visit. He really did. It just proved like, everything he said to my wife and I during that home visit, he proved by coming down and just spending the time. He talked about values, talked about service, he talked about the university's, mission, he talked a lot about the values. And I just think my wife really, really loved that. And I loved it, but I knew it. So it was different for me. I knew, being at Seton Hall and seeing Villanova, I'd met Father Peter before. Um, so it was different for me. It wasn't like, for me, it was like, all right, this is a monster family decision. Everyone's got to be on board.
Well, away from the Villanova connections, Jay Wright being obviously the number one for you before you took the job, we have a couple of mutual friends in the Seton Hall world that I'm guessing you might have made a phone call to before you signed on the dotted line. 1987 Big East All-Star coach PJ Carlissimo took me down to Australia. And a little known fact, Chuck, that's where he grew the beard. He did
Yeah.
not have a beard until he took us down there summer of '87. He has not had a beard since. And
Uh-huh.
of course, the great Bill Raftery, who was the very first podcast Big East Rewind guest and was instrumental in my broadcasting career. I'm going to guess and share with us maybe a couple of phone calls you might have made to those two guys.
I definitely talked to Coach Raff afterwards. I think Sunday, I talked to Coach Raff Sunday, um, after I accepted the job. And Coach Carlissimo has been a really, really good friend of mine for a long time. We had very similar kind of paths at Seton Hall, and I got to have dinner with him out in San Francisco because he was out there doing the radio. And just, more than anything, both those guys have a great perspective on jobs, family, um, you know, which most people don't have. I mean, Coach Raff is still doing something and doing it at the best level at his age is unbelievable. He still has the energy and the enthusiasm. But PJ has like, he has a very good way about just understanding this business, your family, and the paths that you go down. So they've both been great.
Yeah, and take us back. Now that you mentioned Seton Hall, and Mark brought it up. Take us back, to those days, and even before, like when you played in the Big East, you coached in the Big East. What do you think much has changed just in the last few years? But I mean, when you played, it was still rough and tumble. It was more physical, I think, right? It was kind of smash mouth basketball, sort of. Do you think does that stuff carry on to today's game in the Big East?
Chuck, it's a good question. Man, I mean, the Villanova teams that I went against, whew, try to bring the ball up against Alvin Williams. I mean, I didn't do it successfully well, to be honest with you. It was a physical league. I mean, at the time, if you look at the size of the league, the depth was unbelievable. We had so many teams. I think it was 16 teams back then.
Yeah,
Georgetown had Allen Iverson, Duran Sheffer, I think was that, and the UConn guys were all big physical teams, big guards. Miami was really good. So I think the biggest difference that I'm so impressed with the Big East now is that, we're not an overly huge league. We're only 11 teams. And so the
yeah,
depth of this league with only 11 teams, when you compare it to SEC, Big 10, Big 12, I don't even know how many teams the ACC has right now. I think what's really impressed that I've been impressed with over the last couple of years watching the Big East is just still how talented and how deep the conference is, not being only having 11 teams. I mean, 4 of the last 9 national championships have come from the Big East. So you just look at that perspective and only having 11 teams. I think it's as good as it's ever been.
yeah. I agree with you.
So, Coach, talk about the challenges of bringing your own staff into the Big East, where it is a pretty tight-knit community, like you said, with only 11 teams. And obviously you had to make some tough decisions around that reentry. How's that been as far as a progression?
Well, I mean, I explain this to everybody. There's no possible way you can sign 13 guys and have a brand new staff
Right.
and expect to win a game. It's just not possible. You wouldn't have been able to sign 13 guys that know your style, know your personality, know what you want. But most importantly, I have 13 new guys that have never played my system. So if you have to hire a whole new staff and then teach the staff every drill, every way you do things, there's not enough time in the day. We would still be, we wouldn't have one player on the roster. So I put together, I thought, a really great staff at Maryland that represent the type of guys that are my type of guys that love the game, their family, all, just about everyone's fathers, that understand the importance of, like, I treat all my players like I treat my sons. So I want people like that in my staff. I also want guys that I think can be head coaches. And I think everyone on my staff should be a head coach pretty soon. I think David Cox should definitely get another big time job next year. Being around Ashley Howard now, I think Ash should get another chance. Greg Manning is ready for a job. I think Kevin Norris would be a heck of a head coach. So I think I have guys on my staff that are going to be head coaches. And so I love that because they come to work every day driven to become a head coach. And they help build Maryland back up, get us to a Sweet 16. And I brought everyone with me because, they helped me get to that Sweet 16. So for me, it was a loyalty thing. But the other thing was me kind of knowing there's just no way I could try to teach a staff of 5, 6 guys what to do. And so although we've had 13 guys, we've progressed really nicely since we've been here. And this team's making really good strides because I don't have to teach anybody on the staff what to do.
Oh, that's huge. And speaking of teaching guys, sorry to interrupt, Chuck,
All right,
but
it's okay.
Chuck was telling me that Dwayne McClain was at one of your most recent practices and you were down teaching the big guys the game of basketball. I need some help there, Coach. You teaching the big guys? Because Coach Mass used to teach Chuck how to post up. So
I actually, I love working with the big guys. I really do. When I was at Seton Hall, I had Shaheen Holloway. So Shah was my assistant for 10 years. And so I was pretty smart. I was like, Shah was a much better player than me, was a McDonald. I'll let him work with the guards and then I'll take the big guys. And that's kind of how I gravitate. And I really enjoyed working with the big guys. Because most of the time when we work on defense, I mostly spend most of my time with the guards on the defensive end. But on the offensive end, it was great. It's like, I've had the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award winner in Angel Delgado.
Yeah.
And I loved working with the big guys. It's just, it gives me a chance to spend a little bit more time with them. Because all I do is yell at them in practice. They don't set screens. You know how it is, Chuck. You guys suck.
Oh, I know exactly how it is.
Yeah. So I spend so to start practice in a positive way and get to spend some time with them. And they get to tell me like what they like and what they don't like, during that segment, which I love. But then once practice starts, I just yell at big guys the whole time. It's great.
Well, I tell you what I loved about. I went to a couple, as you know, I've been to practice a couple of times now, once at Summer Jam and once prior. I loved walking into the door and looking at 4 guys stare me right in the eyes, instead of having to look down on everybody. You got 3 or 4 guys the same height as me. You got Brendan and Duke, and you got the kid from Nigeria that went to Lehigh.
Big
Some
Nico.
big bodies, and Hodge. You have some size. It was nice to see that for a change. We've been Guard University for a long time, and it was really good. It was really good.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
see.
I think the biggest thing I learned in the Big Ten was big guy depth. If you really want to get deep in the tournament, I look at the 16 team and the 18 team here. The 16 team had Daniel Ochefu, man. Like everybody forget what a beast he was.
And Spellman on the 18 team.
And Spellman on the 18, and Spellman was a monster. Probably a little bit more skilled than Daniel, but not probably just as physical, if I remember correctly. So going through the Big Ten and you go play Wisconsin and you go play Michigan's and back to back to back. Kind of what I learned over the last couple of years was like, you need 2 or 3 big guys, to be able to wear teams down. I think that's what Florida was so great at. They had great guards, but man, they kept running big guys at us and just wore us down. And I think that's why Florida won the national championship, because they had 3 great guards that they could depend on.
Yeah.
but they were playing four big guys, and they would, I mean, they were just rotating them in and out. And that's something I want to do this year a little bit with our big guys is, Duke's a great energy guy, gets up and down the floor,
Yeah.
physical down low. But be able to keep him fresh and bring fresh bodies in, and then play Matty a little bit at the five spot and play differently where we can pick and pop, and play a little bit small ball. So I think that was a little bit of kind of what I learned going through the Big Ten. You go play Purdue and like, forget Zach Edey. I mean, they got Kaufman Wren, but then they come in with another guy and then they come with another guy. And, I remember Julian Reese looking at me like, where's my guy coming behind me? So just making sure we have enough size and physicality.
Yeah, and you have a couple of young kids. You brought in some freshmen. Sometimes some of the coaches, and Patino's been famous for saying this, your former mentor had said that he doesn't really look at the high school kids anymore. You
Well, he's
and
got an
you
official visit this weekend with the high school kid, so he's lying.
okay. Well,
You
there
gotta
you
know,
go.
you gotta know how to cut through his BS, Chuck.
Well, listen, I know about that. He recruited me. He was in my house, and we had a conversation about that at Big East Media Day last year. It was kind of fun with him. So, but you got a couple of kids. You got Chris Jeffries, who does not look like a freshman. I mean, he is a specimen, man. You walk in, I remember what I looked like and what Mark looked like when we were freshmen. It wasn't that. I could tell you that right now. He looks like Superman when he walked in the door. And the other guy is has gotten big raves from Eddie Pinkney. Eddie has seen him play a bunch of time, and that's Arcaden Lewis. Talk about those guys for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things, Chuck, was building this roster. Um, Being in year one, I I just didn't want to go get 7 fifth-year guys and just try to make it. And then next thing you know, we're going and just getting seven, and you're stuck in a loop where you don't have retention. One reason we were really good this year at Maryland was I had Julian Reese for it was his third year, and everything anchored around
Yeah,
Jew. Um, and he knew exactly what to do on defense, and his retention was huge. He was the reason why we got to the Sweet 16. Had great guards, but Jew was the anchor. And so building this roster, I wanted to make sure that we had guys like Duke, Tafarkapari, who are older, that are veterans. But then, Malachi Palmer, who's a sophomore, um, and then Caden and Chris were two young guards who I believe are going to be superstars, and recruited both those guys in the DMV. And when Caden decommitted from Kentucky, I was like, I just seen him play so much and had just know how big his ceiling is. And um, Chris is one of those guys, a New York City guard, who's just kind of like, he's tough boy. I mean, like
oh yeah,
he's going to get in there. And so I love that. I've had so much success with New York City guards. I just love them. I love their attitude, their mentality, their toughness. And so I wanted to balance the roster. And I thought those two guards were really guys that we could build around for the future. And so it's ever evolving, Chuck, to be honest with you,
yeah,
because now we have a budget for freshmen, and it's not very much, to be
right.
honest. So the high school recruiting, I'm almost going towards Coach Patino a little bit and saying, okay, we only have a certain amount of money that we're gonna spend on freshmen, and a lot of freshmen want a lot of money, and you got to sit there and say, okay, is this kid going to come in, and is he good? He's got to be in your top eight. He's got to. If they're not in your top eight, they're going to transfer anyways, and if they're not in your top eight, you just pissed away money. So you really, with the high school kids now, you really got to sit there and say, hey, this is what we're giving you year one. Come in, I'm going to put you in my top eight, and we're going to take care of you. And then on the back end, we'll pay you more that you deserve. But you really just can't spend a whole lot of money on high school freshmen. Everyone doesn't have a ton of money. If the house settlement sticks and everyone has a cap, you'd be nuts to spend 10% of your budget on freshmen.
Yeah.
The NBA spends 6% on
So
rookies.
when you're looking at a kid, especially a high school kid, are you looking at personality and everything too to see if we can get a couple of these guys to stay? Like, do you have in your mind, do you have an idea of, I want to get 10 kids to stay, 8 kids to stay, instead of transforming 12 and 13 kids every year? I mean, you can't even, I don't know how you can sustain any kind of program when you're constantly changing the entire squad every year. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. You know,
Yeah.
I think on this roster, I'd like to retain everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Is
Okay.
that realistic? No,
Yeah.
um, it's not. And it's not what most fans don't understand. It's not the kids. It's not the families. It's agents. So all these guys have agents, and the agents are sitting there, and the agents are shopping kids around right now. You know, it's like, hey, I got a kid at Villanova, and you know he's making this, and what do you think you can pay him next year? And so the agents are already shopping guys around for next year. So you kind of just know that going in. So what we try to do is give them the best experience, make sure that we're trying to give them, um, you know, a great culture, and that we can keep them, and that we can pay them and keep them. But it's not really the kids at all. It's kind of, unfortunately, it's kind of like, you know, agents. You know, the NCAA spent all those years, you know, saying, don't, oh, you can't have
Unbelievable.
an agent, get them. And now agents run the business, and, you know, the NCAA is pretty much helpless.
So, Coach, you're in an interesting spot. You were in the Big East before the NIL blew up. You were at Maryland while NIL was developing, and that's a school that has Division I football and Division I basketball. And now you're back in the Big East that literally just has Division I basketball, big time basketball. You know, we all read that that was some part of your rationale for coming to Villanova. But I guess my question is, what's the difference to the Big East Rewind folks that are watching this podcast, you know, coaching before NIL and now coaching after, and how much of that is controllable from your seat?
Well, I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, you know, my last year at Seton Hall, we had guys making T-shirts and trying to sell T-shirts out of their dorm room. My first year at Maryland, like we were doing tailgates and selling hats, and guys were getting, you know, money, and it was real. It was they were happy. And then the second year at Maryland was where the NIL blew up. Um, you know, and I realized, I was like, whoa, this is different. And then my third year, last year, obviously everyone kind of went crazy, and this year everyone went nuts. Um, it's interesting because I don't think NIL is the issue. It's the transfer portal. That really is probably the biggest fundamental flaw that we have, is that agents are going to tell their kids to go in the portal every year to see how much money that they can get. It's good business by the agents. I mean, if they're getting 10% of the contract, they're not going to sit there and say, well, we can only get X here when we don't know if you can get, you know, Y and Z someplace else. And they don't really care about fit for the most part. They care about just getting the dollar signs. That's how they make money. So it's not really where we messed up, is that we just let everyone transfer every year. I just don't understand how a school, you know, we still give scholarships. We're still paying, and, you know, I don't know how we can give scholarships probably tax free anymore and just let kids leave. I just, where the NCAA just really messed up. They just, you know, they let NIL out of the bag, and they let the transfer portal happen at the same time. And I just don't think there has to be some fundamental value that, if we're giving a scholarship and we're giving them all the free room and board and everything, and then all of a sudden they're just able to leave every year on that. I think with them making money, I think the rules need to be somewhat in place that the schools get their money back. Because it's if the rev share is rev share. Rev share is, they should be getting rev share. The NCAA tournament made $1.2 billion, I think, something crazy last year. So the players in the NCAA tournament should have got rev share. And it should come directly from the NCAA tournament. The money shouldn't come anywhere else besides the NCAA tournament. The TV
Totally.
revenue pays for scholarships. The TV revenue pays for travel, pays for coaching, pays for equipment, pays for insurance. All that money, there's no revenue out of that, especially at a big football school. I mean, you know, you got 100 scholarships in football. You got training. You got, you know, travel. You got everything. The money should be coming out of the two places that the kids are actually making the money. Kids are making the money in the NCAA tournament, and the kids are making the money in the college football playoff system. So those two buckets are really where all the money should come out of, and that should be distributed back to the 68 teams that make the NCAA tournament. And it should be a tier like the NBA playoff system. Like, you know, if you make the Final Four, you should get X amount of dollars from that rev share. If you make the first tournament, then the ref share should be whatever the share of the first tournament. And that would be a great way to make sure that we're A, still giving scholarships, and B, that is really, really rev share. But schools shouldn't be paying the kids on rev. There is no rev share, and there's really no value in NIL. None of these kids have value on NIL. So, I think we're in an interesting dilemma that eventually I think someone's going to realize, especially in the college football, with 12 teams and the amount of money they make, those kids should be getting 50% of that money of those
Yeah.
teams. And so eventually that's kind of, I think, how the system has to reset so that, I don't know how we don't end up cutting sports at every university if we keep paying 20 million out of a budget and there's no revenue coming out. So I don't think that there's not a huge difference between football schools and basketball schools. There really isn't. It's just where the money's coming from and the transfer portal and letting kids transfer all the time after you're giving them, you're giving them academic aid, you're giving them all this stuff, and all of a sudden they just leave. I just think that's where we've messed up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. About 6, 7 years ago, I was doing a game for ESPN when Ben Howland got to Mississippi State, and I chatted with him, of course, UCLA and Pittsburgh background, and I asked him, I said, hey, what's the revenue like at SEC versus the Pac-12 and the Big East? He said, Mark, Mississippi State is the 15th of 15 teams in the SEC, and our revenue in the athletic department is $87 million. Last place. So that's 8 years ago, Coach. And now you fast forward to what the SEC is making in football in the Big Ten, where you just left. It's so dominated, and you obviously know this, that 20 million that you spoke of, I'm sure you barely got 20% of that because it was all going to football, and the rest is going to be privately funded to go to football. And I guess my question is, when you're recruiting, do the kids understand that Villanova in Big East has a basketball-centric first and foremost reputation, or is it really just come down to the agent and the monies?
No, I mean, I think, but this is where kind of everyone misses the boat on this. And no one, the problem is, like, probably in football, there's 40 schools that can compete realistically. In basketball, there's probably like 96 schools that have money. There's so much more money in basketball than there is in football. And it's not the total number. It's just the fact, like a school like George Mason, they could spend $4 million this year. So, like, with $4 million, they can get 3 or 4 or 5 really good players, and then be a factor in A, in their tournament, and B, in the NCAA tournament. Because one of my players could be getting 100,000, and all of a sudden George Mason gives them $1 million. Well, that's the price. That's the price.
Yep.
So, but it can't happen in football. There's not enough teams in football, and there's not enough. So it doesn't matter that football. There's so many players in football that it can't happen. So it doesn't matter that they're getting 16 million and we're only getting 4 million, whatever it is. The real issue is that there's probably 35 other schools that have money that can offset 5 starters. So that's really the biggest issue that most people don't think about in Division I basketball. Football, you got 20 schools are going to win it. Maybe 30 schools, but you have the FBS is not going to take a guy off Penn State. Villanova doesn't have any money to take a player off Penn State. But in basketball, some of the smaller schools have money that can take a player that you were trying to retain, and all of a sudden that's the market. So that's really where basketball has become really difficult, is that we just have so many more teams that have money. Like, I know some lower level teams that you would not believe that spent $3 to $4 million this year. And I'm talking about lower level. And so you just say, well, I was shocked that one of my good friends spent $4 million, and I didn't think they'd ever chance have $4 million.
Wow.
And so, that's just that, and that's a team that's, I wouldn't even put in the top 100 schools. That's probably in the top 200 schools. So that's a 200 level school is spent $4 million on their roster this year. Like,
Wow.
that doesn't happen in football. Football doesn't have that. So that's where it kind of doesn't really matter about the football, basketball stuff. For basketball, our issue is that we just have so many other schools that are going to raise the price for players.
Right.
So we got a few minutes left. Let's get into the season. What you open up with BYU, who's nationally ranked uh, in Vegas, and you got a couple of scrimmage games prior to that, right? To get everybody to kind of get a feel for what you're looking for. What are your reasonably, what are your expectations for the upcoming season?
Yeah, to, to win the Big East. I mean, that's the goal
Okay.
of this program every year. I mean, um, I think once we get healthy, right now, unfortunately, this is probably the worst injury bugs I've ever had as a coach. We've only had 9 scholarship guys for the last 3 weeks. So some of the things I wanted to kind of have ready for BYU, I don't think we're going to have ready. Once we get a couple of these guys back, I really wanted to mess with a big lineup and I wanted to mess with a small lineup. And we just haven't been able to practice that because we just haven't had enough guys. But it's the schedule is, I added Michigan and Wisconsin because I know when you play Wisconsin, you're going to learn everything about your defense in about 3 minutes, if it's
Yeah.
legit or not. Because Greg runs one of the most simple but complicated offensive systems. If you can guard Wisconsin, you can guard anybody in the Big East. Michigan was something that again, Dusty plays a lot like Danny and Coach Pitino. So getting a team like that on the road and seeing where our offense and defense stacked against how Dusty plays was really important. So I kind of look at the non-conference schedule. I try to build it so that when I play against who's supposed to be the best teams in the league that year, you've been tested through them already.
Right.
And you know what you need to fix going into playing St. John's, UConn, Creighton's, those guys. So that's kind of how I did the non-conference. I would not have scheduled BYU. Whew.
Right
Um,
off the bat, it's
no,
tough.
it
Yeah.
just doesn't make any sense. It was one of those games that inherited 5 of the non-conference games. So working around that a little bit and making sure the schedule is a little bit more balanced next year is something I'm really focused on. But next year's schedule, I mean, we're almost done with next year's schedule already. So next year's schedule is a monster. It's going to be great. I think we have some great opportunities. Obviously, Wisconsin, Michigan home. I think we have a chance maybe to play Duke neutral. We have a couple exciting games that I think we have going. So really try, like the Big Ten was weird. Every game was a quad one. Home and
Right.
away was a quad one. And just going through the last 4 years, looking at the schedule, when I first got the job, I went through the last 4 years and just went through the whole Big East, quad one, quad two, quad three, and just making sure that we balance out maybe some quad two games that we're going to get at certain times in the Big East schedule and making sure we have enough quad one opportunities just for strength of schedule going forward. So really looking at the top part of the Big East, which I think obviously is really strong this year with St. John's and UConn. I think
Yep.
Creighton's going to be really good. I think Marquette's going to be very good. I think we're going to be really good. Um, and I think the bottom is actually going to be much better than it was last year. So balancing out
Yeah.
the fact that I think Seton Hall is going to be much improved. I think DePaul's going to be much better. So I think you look at what the bottom was, they got better. The top's really good. The middle's really solid. I think Georgetown's going to be much better. But still making sure that you have enough quad one opportunities. And obviously at Michigan, at Wisconsin will be quad one games.
So when you look at the schedule, it was no accident that your first Big East game is against your old squad. I mean, that's the matchmakers on that had some fun with that one, I think. But you got a lot of really good games at the Finn. Instead of playing at the whatever they're calling it these days, used to be the Wachovia Center. I'm not
I
sure the
think it's
name
the
of it now.
Xfinity Mobile. I think it's
Yeah.
Xfinity Mobile.
So I mean, you got some really big time teams coming in this year.
You think I'd get a deal on my Xfinity deal, but I didn't. Um, no, we do. I mean, I think that's something that's again, we got Pitt home. Um, and I think balancing out the schedule is important. The Big Five is new to me. Trying to figure out the Big Five and how that plays into everything with your schedule.
Yeah,
Uh,
those games are always tough.
yeah, I mean, those are going to be
Yeah.
battles. So, and understanding that they're going to be battles. So, just making sure that we get a great home package, balancing out your schedule. you still want to build momentum, and that's something I think, that's what I'm working on for next year is making sure there's parts of your schedule that you can build momentum and get better. That's really important early, especially with the way college basketball is now.
So, Coach, you mentioned the Big Five. I'm guessing you're going to lean on Coach Ash for his experience in the Big Five. Chuck and I can tell you of the 4 years, there was never a game that's decided by more than 2 points, and it has nothing to do with the talent. So it's amazing that
Oh, yeah, no, I know it. And the only thing I didn't know this, I was really looking forward to playing in the Palestra. I thought all the games were in the Palestra. That just tells you how
Yeah,
much
it used to be, yeah.
now
You
it's
wouldn't say that
it's
if you had
home.
to use the locker room, Coach. I'll tell you that. It's like
Well,
dressing in a closet. It's unbelievable, right, Mark?
they blamed Coach Massimino for that, but Coach didn't like those locker rooms, and he liked the money that came in when we didn't have to play in the Big Five. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, the Big Five, they don't like us very much, the suburban school. We're the only one really not in the city limits, so to speak. So they don't take too kindly to us. But that's what makes it fun. It's bragging rights
Absolutely.
for the city, and I'm sure you've heard all about it. So
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So, Coach,
so go
away
ahead,
from
Mark.
away from winning the Big East, what's your biggest excitement that's driving you for the season coming up, Coach Willard? What's the biggest carrot out there that's driving you personally?
Oh, I think just building this back to being the championship level program. I mean, more than anything, that. People say it's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of that, but I enjoy that. I mean, I understand the history, the former players. I know it inside and out, and I think that's something that you wake up every morning knowing that you're trying to rebuild a championship program, and that drives me. I love that. I know what's ahead of us. I think we know how we're doing it, and I think the biggest thing is laying down the groundwork for that. Not just for 1 year, but to be able to have continued success year in, year out. I mean, that's more than anything what I talk about every day with the staff. It's just not this year. It's just not next year. It's our job is to make sure that every year we have a championship level program.
I tell you what, Coach, this is one thing that Chuck and I, learned from Coach Mass, and Coach Wright did a great job trumpeting it in his 20 years. If you can resurrect the phrase "once a Wildcat, always a Wildcat" in Nova Nation, then you have exceeded all expectations, and you will succeed. Because I think the culture that you're seeking to resurrect is exactly that.
Well, Chuck and I have talked about this. I think
Yeah.
that's the most special thing that I've part of this program that I've seen and been in so far is just how the generational love of the program from all the former players. It's just not mass. It's Laps guys. Obviously, it's Jay guys. I mean, it's everyone, and I think that's been really special for me to kind of just hear all the different stories from all the different generations. Whether it was Josh and Jalen, at their podcasts, whether, I saw Ivan Williams that day at Fleming's, or listen to Chuck tell all his freaking stories. It's great. It's just, I think that the former players are obviously what makes this place so special.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, and it's not just talk, which is great. And I'm glad you get it, and thank you for being so great to the basketball alumni. There's a lot of chatter, a lot of excitement. The guys can't wait to get the season off to a start. And this is last question. We'll let you go. I know you got to go. So, what would you say to all these kids and all the fans that are going to pack the Fin and to see you guys play? What can they expect to see from a Kevin Willard, the beginning of the Kevin Willard era?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it goes smooth, Chuck.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm already listen. I know it'll be smooth. I'm talking about
No,
what
I
I'm talking
again,
about
we're
style.
we're we're gonna have fun, man. We're gonna get up and down a little bit. We're gonna try to. We're probably not gonna press as much as I did at Maryland, for a couple different reasons, but we're definitely gonna get up and down, and play a fun style, and get after it a little bit. But I think the most part, we're gonna play a lot of guys. We're gonna be physical. We're gonna be tough, but we're gonna play a fun style of basketball that's fun to come and watch.
Well, Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know you're busy this time of year, of course. Thanks a lot for joining us. We can't wait to see you. We'll see you at the games. We'll see you during the season.
No, I appreciate it, guys. Great being on with you.
All right,
See
pal.
you, Coach.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You've been watching and listening to the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Mark Plansky. The production team of Daryl Gurney, Nick Chico Chorus, and James Happ and Jack Wynn all did a great job of putting this all together for us. You can check us out on the Sirius XM app, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.